Good morning. You've joined the third of 4 resiliency programs led by Shelly Koehler, an advisor from the Small Business Development Center of Connecticut, and facilitated by Workspace and the Town of Manchester's Department of Planning and Economic Development. Feel free to unmute yourself now to avoid any background noise, and unmute anytime to ask a question. And Shelly, I will, before handing it off to you, before we started this recording, we were talking about the personal resiliency of owning a business during this time. So if anyone needs assistance with that, we do have a personal resiliency program happening Monday at 2 p.m. And you can reach out to me to have a conversation about it and to get some referrals and resources for you and or your employees. Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you, Stacy, and I want to thank you for that because it's hand in hand. You can't not have the personal side be affected, and that is very important. That's actually more important because if you don't have that, it's really hard to bring back your business. So thank you for that, and please do reach out to Stacy. She's an amazing coach. So we are on part 3. Of our Business Resiliency series, and that is implement. And to just take a look at what we've already done. We've identified the areas and some critical business functions and things of your particular focus. We last week kind of developed, or you had a outline to take those critical business functions and put them into somewhat of a plan, creating a list for emergencies, communications. So kind of really just the platform and the format to now move forward into implementing. We're going to take all of that information and it's kind of going to be your guide to moving forward. Now, having said that, this implement phase, when we're looking, and I've always kind of clarified it, we are looking at future, but we're also looking, we are in the trenches already. So the implement phase, when you're looking forward, you can pretty much just kind of create your step-by-steps and say, okay, this is how we'll go forward. And then it's your guide once you're in a crisis. So let's just zoom forward into the crisis and go, okay, we are going to look at it from a 30,000 foot view, but we are really going to look at it today from a reopen, because you've identified the areas and now really the next step is going to be reopen for you. For some of you, it might be next week. For others, it might be 3 weeks away, depending on those guidelines. So today, as we move from the plan that we've sketched out on paper to minimize that impact, we are going to move full-blown into implementation. It looks like is really mitigating the risk from what we've already written down. Now, how are we going to mitigate some of that risk that we've identified? And we're going to bring in the guidelines for the reopen. So there are kind of 2 or 3 different arms that we're going to have to look at. And to keep it as simple as we can, this is going to be on a kind of non-industry specific. It's going to cover it, and then I'm going to lean on you, and I'm going to give you some links that you will definitely want to look at and make sure that you're tied into your industry associations for any other specifics that are going to be necessary.
Shelly, I have a question. This is Stacy. Everyone's using the word guidelines, but I know that there are some recommended guidelines, and then there are some guidelines which are really the law, that if you don't follow them, people can file complaints and you can be shut down.
Right. So getting into that, and for those industries that have already been identified to open, those are part of what we're going to be talking about as the implementation. And just to kind of reiterate what Stacy said, they have been deemed or identified as guidelines. but they are not just guidelines. These are the rules. There is no if, ands, or buts. It is the rules in order to open. My boss, just to give an FYI, he is on the Connecticut Small Business Reopen Task Force for the state. And I just got a lot of this information this morning. But to your point, Stacy, absolutely. To reopen, they are giving out the industry specifics, guidelines, but they are rules. These are not if you want to do them. These are, you have to do these or you don't reopen. So looking at that, right, your guidelines and your rules, once you get them, you can now take a look at, okay, how am I going to manage that risk? I can do X, Y, Z. What does that look like? Now I need to look at training. How do I train? And inside of that, there are a couple what we call control factors. There is the admin part, and then there's the engineering part. We'll define those a little bit more. And then before you open, you kind of want to test and measure how these things are going to work. And again, prior to opening, this is a comfort level you're going to have one for you, for your employees, for the safety and the rules of what's required of you, and most of all, for your customers. Because the conversation that really encompasses everything from here on out is going to be customer confidence. I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind. So as we look at implementing some of the things you've looked at, the critical business functions that you might need to identify and move forward with, it's really just to help create that sustainability or stability, my bad, it's the stability. So you're going to take a look at what you have and you're going to take a look at the guidelines. And now you're going to be able to make some critical alterations or maneuverings for your planning. You know, long-term planning, again, we're going to be able to pick a lot out of what we're doing now and put them into the long-term planning with some modifications. I wanted to focus on the immediate because that's where we are. So, you know, the immediate purposes is really looking at that risk management piece. Some of that is really, what does all that look like? And this is going to be a big piece of it, training. So taking what you've identified, taking your guidelines, and now how do I move forward with looking at the ways to train, right? So the first round is being realistic, right? Preparing for what the future is going to bring. The guidelines can tell you, but only you know your industry or your business and how it flows. You know, you're making sure that the safety of your employees and your workers, given that, right, the task force by the governor's office is coming up with those rules, but you as an employer as well are going to have to train them and let them know. Some people are very against the mask. You might say, well, you don't have to wear it. Well, guidelines say you have to. Now, there is a reason for that. And you as an employer need to adhere to those. If your employees don't, then there are morals and values. Some are not paying too much attention to that. But you know, again, these are rules. We are trying to move through, and the only way to do that is to, one, do it together. And as much as sometimes we don't like this process, we have to trust that this process moving forward and the guidelines and rules that they're giving per industry, is going to work. We have nothing else to weigh in on. So, you know, they're looking at helping us manage those risks, but you as an employer need to train. So the key number one is really looking at where and what are the resources that will help you specifically for your industry. You know, at the state level, the local level, really tap into your industry association. You know, there's the trickle down from the White House to the states to then the local. And then the industries are really focusing on how best to help businesses in that industry. So they're taking it from the top down and really coordinating stuff. And that is probably one of the best resources to help you specifically with what you are looking at coming up against. You know, the protective measures are for life or death right now as we know it. And we need to make sure that, one, our employees understand that, but as well, you know, making sure that they carry these out. And once we look at the different stages that each industry needs to kind of go through, look at it from stages, you know, kind of break it down into different areas that need to be adapted and carried out. So, you know, one could be, you know, the masks and glove. How do we do this? We put it on before we come into work. You know, if we need to, like stages, just do it one by one so that it's not one overwhelming for them or for you. And this is part of what I was talking about prior to opening. So, you know, inform them of the changes. And it can be as easy as taking what your industry is saying and printing it out and giving them the guidelines and saying, okay, this is what we need to do. And we are a team. And being transparent, not controlling, but transparent. Like, look, I'm going to be shut down if I don't follow these guidelines. So you as an employee need to follow these guidelines. And just help them realize the situation that they're in. And you're not trying to inhibit any of their freedoms, but this is how it is going to be moving forward until further notice. So the timeline on the guidelines from the governor's office, right, have given us a few different areas in which to reopen. If some of you may have gotten an email from me last night, if you are a current client, if you are not, let me know. There are different PDFs for each particular industry that is allowed to reopen next week. And that can also be found on the government, the state's website, ct.gov, under their COVID. And it gives you all the parameters. It gives you everything, parameters, guidelines, rules that are going to be required. So let's see, we'll go to the next. So these first are really trainings. You know, we pulled stuff off of other resources that we felt would really look at both the 30,000 foot view and as well be very pertinent to current situation. Because no one had this on their calendar. No one said, hey, on this date, we better be ready because there's a pandemic coming. But, you know, I also, if you guys find a great resource, please forward it to me, because we're all about really wanting to share the best information. So we just try and go to the highest levels, like the National Institute of Health. So the next one, you know, is really safety and health for returning workers. Just things to cover, things that you will want to implement. And again, it's really difficult to look at all this information and go, oh, there's so much to do, piece by piece. Again, scaling back and just one at a time. Most industries who are not opening yet, just start tomorrow with one, finding out where you can get PPE for free or for at cost. And I do have some of those websites and information. But also the training is, as I was talking about before, two-part. Part of it's administrative controls and some of it's engineering. And then the rest is the safety features. Having stuff on hand, making sure that all of the employees know where it is and how to use it. As well, you know, reporting any of the safety and violations of safety or health plan. It's important. It's not like you ever want to, you know, tattletale. This is not a high school or an adolescent kind of scenario. This is like, we need to make sure we're doing our part. And if someone is compromising you, your customers, or your family, then things need to change. And people need to make sure that they are doing the right thing. You know, as far as sick leave and compensation policies and procedures, that's in the CARES Act. Again, there's a guide. I did send that out to clients. If you need it, let me know. I can forward that to you. It is on the SBA website. So at the end, there are several websites you're going to want to have just on a click of a button. One is the SBA. One is the state. We are on there as well, CTSBDC.com. And then local. Because state is not going to override local guidelines. Some locals are making their own guidelines and rules. So there might be some that the state has implemented and the local says we're not going to, or vice versa. The state hasn't implemented something and local says we're going to do this. So have that, those very close. Those are some main resources. All of them are from the top down. On ours, again, you can see the resiliency, you can see webinars, and we have up to date on the task force information. We are kind of the all-in-one, barring we don't have the local, but we have the state, we have the SBA, and then we have anything that's coming down from the task force or other intermittent stuff that's coming to us. So we're a good one-stop shop, and then you can filter out from there. A lot of what's going to be impactful is really the engineering piece of our controls. How are you going to alter your place of business to accommodate? And then administrative controls, right? So these are, you know, the employees, the pieces and parts that you really need to monitor. In engineering, you're just going to put those in place. Those are structural. Administrative are really the behaviors of your employees and customers. So one other piece about this is, you know, your employees and the support and the effects of safety and well-being. That is really going to be one of your main kind of pieces that you're going to need to monitor. They need to feel safe. They need to know that you are making an effort and doing everything you can. Because all this then leads back down into customer confidence. As I was telling you earlier, everything you're doing here is for you and your business, but it's a different message once you open. Customers are going to want to know that you've taken the proper steps, that you have listened to the Health Institute, and your employees know what they should be doing. That confidence is not going to come out of the gate. It's going to come with things that you are going to do. And mind you, you can only do what's in your control. Anything out of your control doesn't matter. Just like I know I want to take a vacation. I have airline tickets that I'm worried about. I'm like, they're going to tell me if I can or if I can't. So I can't really worry about that. That's out of my control. what I can control is how I'm reacting and what I'm doing, and making sure that the information I get out is proper and good for you guys. So keep that in mind too. You know, there's only a certain amount here that we are in control of, and we need to make sure that we do it right. And it will take all of us. So don't feel like, I know we all feel like we have to do it all. Use your resources. And I think moving forward, you know, we've all tried to do things on our own. Use your resources and reach out. Okay, so I was talking a little bit about, you know, keeping your employees safe and keeping your customers safe. You want to be able to train them. And this is right, we're backing up 2 slides where you are now laying out the plan for how you're going to move forward. Here's some of the guidelines. 6 feet of social distancing. You're going to need to use barriers, messaging, your signs, use words, and then look at what procedures inside of your workplace and your customer area are going to need to be modified. And in some case, closed. You know, I've walked into Target and Walmart, half of their stores closed because they don't want people meandering for hours. Grocery stores, as you know, 6 feet marks, aisles one way. What is it that you're going to have to do? And again, look at your industry specifics and associations for some of that information. This is kind of a big one, and I think in the past, it's a big nuisance, but it's very, very important, and it's become very clear, I think, as a nation, how we need to keep things clean and how germs are transmitted. And, you know, given the COVID and how it transmits is very important to understand. If you have poo-pooed it, I have friends that, we don't need to wear the mask. And it's like, yeah, you do, because just me wearing the mask only prevents, you know, that my chances are 30% now. If you have a mask on and I have a mask on, it's now 1% transmittable. So make sure they understand these pieces. And again, tap into your resources and really find that information, and reach out. I have it. It's on CDC's website, which I'll be giving you a link to that because that's very important, and a couple other informational links that will give information on how to not eliminate, but really allow or for you to see the exposure inside your business and how to mitigate that. You know, moving into the cleaning and the use of PPE and so forth and so on, I think this is a big key, finding what it is you need for your industry to clean with, frequency, and schedule. That is an absolute key. How are you going to know if that was cleaned before? So this is part of that process. Okay, guess what? Susie, you are responsible for every hour going around and cleaning all doorknobs, all shelves, whatever it is it's needed for your particular industry. And that's a retail setting. And I'm going to have one person at the counter. They're not going to move. They're going to be, so really take a look at how you can operate and then implement these particular scenarios and disinfect and the masks and the gloves. How often should they change the gloves? They've been touching everything and clean, you know, maybe it's every hour. Okay, you need to have that for them. Great, we need to get on finding out where you can get that at either a cost or for free. This one right here, modifying work procedures. This might take a little bit more engineering than we anticipate. Just like we see at the stores, the shield, to alleviate or minimize human interaction. There's a great story. Home Depot. I've been there twice. I had to stand in line, not for very long, but they had a whole line 6 feet apart. They were only allowing 125 people in at a time. So when one came out, the exit was a different way from the entrance. They altered everything about their store. People cannot just go in and come out however they'd like. They even altered how you check out. I don't know if this is a newer story, but now they're down to 50 people. So that eliminates any possibility really to bump into anybody. And that's what they want. Now, 50 people in their store at a time, even if it's buying at a $5 item or a $100 item, that's a significant hit, right? And that's another part of what we want to look at inside business resiliency later, the recovery part. So again, exposure prevention. Now, and I got a little bit into this, the hazard elimination. You know, you have someone who's cleaning on an hourly basis, or after every client comes and goes, how do you dispose of this stuff? Where do you put it? Sanitizer you want for your customers. So you kind of got to map out a plan, and this was part of a plan. Map out your store, you know, emergency exits. Now you can take that plan, make a copy of it, and now just write down where you're going to put things so that all employees know. There's a hand sanitizer at the door. There's a message on the door saying you must have your mask on and gloves on. Put them on, come in, do what you got to do, and then maybe have a trash can out there where they take them off and throw them away. So these are things, and if you have it mapped out, everybody knows what should be doing, where things should be, and they feel comfortable that knowing that Susie is cleaning on an hourly basis, and that everything that's being taken off is throwing into one garbage can or two, one at the entrance and one at the exit, and things are available to them. One, if you have a lot of employees, and you may, even if you have one or two, want to implement this, is temperature and symptom check before they enter. This I know is a little, people might think invasive of their privacy, but again, we have to look at the big picture of it. If I'm going to make someone feel comfortable by coming into my store because I've checked everybody who's come in and knowing that they don't have symptoms and that I'm, you know, have less of a chance of getting COVID, that is going to gain confidence in me. Barring the guy who's not wearing a mask, or half of his, you know, checkout people they feel like they're safe with the grid and they don't have a mask on. You've got to build that customer confidence and saying, I'm doing everything I can. If I need to check temperatures, I will. Pratt & Whitney, that's what they do. All hospitals, that's what they do. Because there's too much possibility of exposure. And then even inside the hazard part, right, even taken into consideration, there's still an opportunity for people to become infected. So I'm just running through all of these so that I know I'm not eliminating anything, because I can talk kind of fast. Any questions up until now?
Shelly, there's one in the chat room about SBDC or the state having uniform signage regarding exposure prevention. I just shared a link that I found on CDC that has some actual signage on it, but it also recommends that you contact your local health department.
Yes.
So I'll reach out to the Manchester Health Department as well to see what they suggest and make sure that it's posted, which it might already be, on the town of Manchester's COVID page.
Perfect. So having said that, there are the CDC, and at the end of this, there'll be websites, and I will get you those information links. But so the messaging, right? I think that the task force is kind of in the midst of that in regards to Connecticut. And we're jumping ahead a little bit, but since you posed the question, that goes along with messaging. Like, how can I tell my customers what I've done? And one of the participants emailed me earlier asking about the self-certification and what is going to be required. It has been mentioned that businesses will need to self-certify before they open. What does that look like? That is all being discussed right now. So part of that self-certification, to the best of what I know right now, is going to be voluntary. So it's not going to be a requirement. Again, this is as I know right now, and as I've heard from a participant in the task force, it's going to be voluntary, but I think it's going to be a critical piece in customer confidence and a message to your customers, or those who aren't your customers, maybe a new customer, that here, I have self-certified, this is what it took to get here. And, you know, then your message, either from your local health department, or once they get a kind of one that goes across the board, consistent, so that people know they're doing what's right. They're doing what's right. Oh, they don't have it on their door. I don't know if I want to go in. That's going to be a lot of customer confidence. And I think setting that up is going to be key. So great question, whoever asked that. And just FYI, so our communications and marketing department has tripled in the past 2 weeks, which we are delighted about. They are actually creating a messaging document. So stay tuned. I imagine probably in the next week or so, we'll have a little bit more about that. But it'll be outlining, you know, how to send that message out, being transparent, you know, what to put out there, and how to make your customers confident in your messaging. So there'll be some of that coming along too through the SBDC. And another plug for the SBDC, we have obviously added a lot to our staff. So we are very prepared for different areas, focuses to help. Again, our website is absolutely exploding, but it has much needed and critical information for a one-stop shop. And then what you don't get there, you go to industry or state levels. Okay, moving on. So we've gone over just employee training. We've gone over exposure. We now are looking at the hazard piece. And again, these are all industry specific and the guidelines and rules that you're going to have to follow. And hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol. I don't know where they came up with 60. In my world, it's always been 70. And what I use at home, I made my own, it's 90. So, you know, I know that they're trying to make the guidelines kind of like everything else is minimal. This is the level in which we want to operate. You know, I don't know of any sanitizer that has less than 70, but I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was kind of funny. So we're going to move into some of the control factors. And again, the engineering controls are really the structural pieces that will either be required of you or you may want to put in regardless. And depending on your business, right, it might look like some ventilation. If you are a takeout place, I go to an ice cream shop and they have 6 people working, and it's kind of like the old drive-ins, you know, you place your order over the phone, you pay for it by credit card over the phone, they scoop it like there's 2 people coming in and out, and then they bring it to you in a bag. So, you know, like Dairy Queen, they're doing a killing on their drive-thru. Nobody's getting out. But if you don't have that ability, what else do you need to do? What makes sense? And again, steal ideas from what you've seen out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just like, I really like that. Now, how do I get it, right? On our staff call this morning, we've identified a few vendors that do plastics, that have switched from doing whatever they're doing to making guards. And again, as well, PPE masks. So there are absolutely vendors out there selling this stuff, some giving it away for free. So please be sure to tap into that, right? Okay, so.
May I interrupt and just ask you a question there, Michelle? You've mentioned this a few times, find such and such for free or low cost. And are you saying that you have resources that you can recommend for these? Because
yes, I will be giving those out. When I email you, there are, so the ones that are free, I know, so part of our conversations this morning were around the PPE, the essential PPE businesses. Essential businesses that need PPE.
Essentials, okay.
Then there are companies that are giving free PPE out to those essential businesses, right? So to hospitals and that are going through it like no tomorrow. But there are other resources that are making it, sometimes selling it for just cost. But you know, even the plastic shields and barriers, you know, they're now up everywhere. You might need that, you know, for your business. So yes, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I wrote it down. Yeah, so there's an organization called CBIA, free masks for employers that have 20 employees or less and that are essential businesses. Check with your towns. Sometimes the towns have avenues, or people have looked to the towns saying, hey, I got all these masks, or I'm a supplier, let me, you know, pass it out. Chambers, they'll know that as well. There are one other state, Constep is a resource, CONNSTEP. And again, this is for essential businesses right now. They're giving out 2 masks per employee. Again, that's essential businesses. But then there's other, like I said, manufacturing companies that I can certainly forward to you for your sneeze guards, shields, any other engineering stuff that you might need in that realm.
That would be great, because it's a fortune. It's $1,000 to open the door.
Right. And so that's part of the next part is, you know, when you implement this stuff, or you look at implementing, because right now we're just looking at it and saying, this is what I need to do to implement. And then when you get down through all of it, what does it cost you? And in that cost, is it worth me reopening? That's another conversation, right? But we have to identify this first. So that's, and this as well, if you take it from a 30,000 foot view, you know, we're talking about the reopen, but typically a resiliency and a plan of this nature, you're doing it before it happens. So, you know, we're like I said, we're kind of looking at it from a reopen, but you want to have all this information so that once things settle here, we're going to revisit this, because you need to have this information for any other disaster that is unforeseen right now that could happen inside this disaster. So it's, again, it's just, these are pieces and parts on the very surface level for all industries. Industry specific, again, you'll definitely want to contact and be in touch with your associations, industry associations.
Shelly, this is Stacy. As people are spending money on cleaning supplies and PPE, is there a reason to keep those receipts separate? Is there a possibility of reimbursement down the line?
I would keep those receipts. I have no idea if it would be, so reimbursed. I think that comes under more of all of the relief programs that have come about, right? So, you know, that could be part of your idle money. There, Stacy, I have no idea. That's kind of a question that would be for down the line. Who knows? Now, rumors, only rumors. There might be a third round for idle. We don't know. Maybe that could be part of it. I don't know. Again, it's just a rumor. The other rumor is that given the timeline of opening, there could be a possible extension from the 8-week, from the PPP program, going from 8 weeks to 16 weeks. Again, those are just rumors and being talked about. What I do know is the PPP is still open. There are still funds. So that was going to be an announcement at the end, but we kind of opened that up. So if you haven't or know people who have not applied, please have them do so. And if they don't want it once they've approved, they can reject it. Okay. And so engineering controls. I think Stacy made a great, point. I would keep all receipts because you never know. I would just make a little pandemic file, okay, outside of this one, or use the inside cover and just put everything that is over and above what you would normally need to do, because it will be expensive. I don't want to say will be, but it could be, depending on the size of your store and what you need to implement. So the engineering controls. Any questions on these? It's really just identifying your area. Okay. So I think we kind of went over some of the examples of engineering, but the one thing about these engineering controls is they are actually the most cost effective and most effective for eliminating and mitigating risk of COVID. So when we're looking at the price, it's going to be more for some, less for others. But when you're looking at how can I best control, right, what I can't control, these types, the engineering pieces are the most effective. And when looking at it, they will be the least cost effective because the masks and the gloves are going to be ongoing. This is a one-time shot. So again, just keep those particular receipts on the side. We're going to get into some things that we've already seen. If you have employees and they're cubicle by cubicle, you're going to have to rework that 6 feet apart, as we all know. The barriers, again, we just talked about the plastic shielding. Now, we haven't talked too much about ventilation. This could be something that is an easy thing to put in, and it just runs. And there's, you might have to change the filter depending on the ventilation filter or air filtration system that you have. But that could be an absolute easy one to do. I want to spend a little time. There's several examples of what we consider to be touchless contact. I had to look for that word. Meaning there's no cash exchange, there's no credit cards touching each other, and or the product is not you know, being brought up somewhere, they're touching it, scanning it, none of that. It is all touchless. In fact, I went to get my puppy's flea and tick stuff, and I called. They had it. I gave them my credit card. I pulled up. I called. They put it outside, and I had my own disinfectant. I wiped the bag off, and I brought it. So it was completely touchless, but there was still contact. Some places are going to be able to do that. Others are not. You know, they're very specific in what they offer. So kind of think of parts that maybe you can do that with, or areas you can implement that. Okay, so now we've gone through the actual engineering or structural, the administrative, and this is where it's almost, you know, it's more daunting because it's more written and what do I need to do and here's to follow. But again, keep it simple. Just copy the guidelines and just go from there. Make that your control program. Make notes on the side if necessary. You know, again, just because you can open doesn't mean you should open, or doesn't mean that you really want to open. You have to have that level of comfort in order to open and know that you have everything covered. So, you know, while it used to be 125 in Home Depot, and I just read recently it's now down to 50, they didn't have a comfort level, so they lowered that. You know, hours of operation. I used to love to take my dog to daycare. She's a puppy. She just needs that action every day. Mondays and Wednesdays, or Wednesdays and Fridays from 8 to 3. That's it. Because it's their level of comfort. And then knowing, you know, how they're going to, now they have a place where they can start from as to, okay, now I can open up more. How do I do that? And what do I need to do that? You know, most everybody's already switched takeout or sit in to takeout. If you're takeout, you might want to consider delivery. You know, there's always other opportunities coming up and other people looking for something to implement. This delivery service, Uber Eats, they're all out there. But again, it's what is going to be best for your business. And obviously, you know, non-essential travel. We used to go at least meet every client at their facility, at their retail shop, whatever. And we have not been doing that for almost 8 weeks. And we have looked at, hey, you know, we're actually a lot more productive. Do I miss that contact? Absolutely. Is it required? Maybe not. So you kind of look at, okay, again, this is part of, we got to put something into place. Let's test it and see how it goes. Limit the number of staff. You may not need that many staff anymore, but as customer confidence grows and you have more people, you can bring people back. Again, the high exposure tasks, and this is where, you know, you don't want everybody doing that high exposure task. So you figure out what it is and you make your own process, you know, whatever that looks like. Again, training, very critical once you figure out what you need to do. These are just some additional tasks that, you know, we pulled off of where did we pull this off of? CDC or National Institute, the Cleveland Clinic. You know, barriers, rope signs, floor markings. People are now looking at the floor for the past 5 years, people are looking down for their phone. People are putting sign on the floor. Yale Hospital, all the signage is on the floor. Nothing is up anymore. It's all on the floor because they found everybody was looking at their phone, missing signs. It's crazy. They implemented that about 5 years ago. So just read through some of this and, put into place what makes you feel comfortable. And then obviously what is required. Let's see. This all goes into your customer confidence. You might have a particular type of clientele and they are particular about X, Y, and Z. You are going to have to take those things into consideration that are not in your rules. They're not in your guidelines. The guy next door is not doing it, but you might want to make sure that you do. And this is what we are really thrown and thwarted into in the next week. Given the timeline and given the information that's coming out in bits and pieces, you have to feel comfortable. You have to understand where you sit, and your business on day one is not going to be the make or break mark. So you can open on the 20th, but you don't feel comfortable because you don't have your shields up or you don't have don't do it, because your confidence is going to come through, or lack thereof, into your consumers. And that is, you don't want that message. You don't want that message at all. So again, there are conversations and other things to look at, but if you don't feel comfortable or you're not ready and your competitor is, and don't feel like you have to just because your competitor is. And I'm going to give you a prime example here. For those who were the first out of the gate to apply for the EIDL loan, boom, the 21st or whatever that date was, they had it in at midnight. Well, what happened on the 23rd? Guess what? None of that mattered, because the back end was not ready. They couldn't handle it. There were other things they needed to implement. There were things that come out over time. And same with the customer. All customers are not going to come flooding out of their doors on May 20th to go walk in and go do things. They are just as precautious as the businesses need to be. So, maybe there's a customer or two that are just dying to get their hair done, or they're dying, they have to go get this X, Y, and Z, and you're not open, but they get it from somewhere else. It has to be a confidence level in you and what you bring. And prior to May 20th or prior to you opening, you want to test these measures. Is my sneeze guard in the right space, right? So you're going to get a sneeze guard. You're going to have to install it. So, all of these little things, and it's keep each task just as simple as you can and one at a time. But you want to make sure that what you're doing is going to be right for you, your employees, and the customers. So, we talked about that emergency plan, lay it out, the communication plan, who's going to be in charge. You can take some of those pieces and put them in implementation, because it's going to be all part of moving forward.
Shelly, this is Stacy. Just for anybody who hasn't been on the past calls, there have been some documents that Shelly's referring to, specific checklists, which are really helpful in terms of training your employees and making sure everybody is on the same page. So you can reach out to her if you haven't seen those documents yet, but we are coming to time.
Yes.
Anybody have specific questions that are relevant to the whole group? Most likely they are. And if not, you can certainly reach out to Shelly directly. Do we have a slide with your email address?
We do. Here's what the links I will send to you as well on the training, hazard exposure, and community impact. And then here's my email address. And while you're all writing that down, Just a little further information, the state is looking at PPPE needs and ways to address this. To Donna, your point in regards to the expense of it. And, you know, I think I've already said the PPPE for essential businesses, that I gave some of those resources for essential businesses, and that self-certification is voluntary at this point, and they don't have the actual guidelines for that. I know, Donna, you had asked that in an email. But the Connecticut Reopen Small Business Task Force is coming out with a guideline. And that is due next week. And that will answer a lot of questions all in one place. So I thank you for your time. Shoot me questions. I know sometimes an hour is too long and sometimes it's too short. So please feel free pertaining to any information. Anything
Thank you.
else?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.